This episode is brought to you by Timely Presence. Grief doesn't end at the graveside, but most support does. Timely Presence helps families and friends continue showing up throughout the first year of loss with personalized remembrance gifts, timed to the days that tend to hurt most. The first holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, and quiet milestones when grief can feel especially heavy. Because the people we love deserve to be remembered beyond the funeral. And the people grieving deserve to feel supported long after the first wave of care has faded. Visit thetimelypresence.com to learn more. Welcome back to the Highlight Your Healing podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Roan, and my guest today is Cherise, a licensed therapist, founder of Therapy with Cherise, and author of You've Been Holding It Together, a reminder for so many women who've been carrying more than they were ever meant to carry alone. Through her work, Cherise creates space for people to process what they've been through, especially in seasons where life has changed in ways they didn't expect. And today, we're talking about something that I know so many women experience, but don't always have the words for: grief as identity disruption. What it looks like when loss or life transitions change the way you see yourself. When the version of you that you once knew no longer feels familiar, and how you begin to rebuild without rushing yourself to have all the answers. So, Cherise, I just want to say thank you so much for being here and for the work that you're doing to help people navigate these kinds of seasons with more understanding and support. And just welcome to Highlight Your Healing.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So before we get into today's conversation, I would just love for you to start by introducing yourself and telling us a little more about who you are, and then walking us through your perspective on this topic.
Yes, so I'm Cherise Small. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I support individuals in both California and Pennsylvania. So my practice is completely virtual, and a lot of the times I'm supporting women who are, dealing with identity shifts or changes, really huge life transitions. And I feel like, my opinion on this topic is that allowing yourself to have room to shift and change through every day, all of the different changes that we may experience. So I'm excited to kind of get deeper into the conversation so that we can really explore what it looks like within those identity shifts, whether it's grief or just huge life changes.
So there's often an assumption that grief only follows death, but you work with women navigating all kinds of loss, right? Jobs, relationships, roles, versions of themselves. How do you help someone recognize that what they're actually experiencing is actually grief?
Yeah. So a lot of the times what I do first is, provide the space, right? So we're kind of going through, what exactly are we feeling and experiencing? And then we usually get to the core of what I used to do or used to be or how things were, right? And then we kind of come to the realization of where we are now. So then that's when we kind of work through that. Hey, right now this is a sense of loss for you. So really allowing a space to I ask some really not difficult questions, but thought-provoking and reflective questions so that other individuals and women can understand that, grief is formed in so many different ways. It's any sense of loss. It could be any sense of loss of something that could have been within your life for a certain period of time. And a lot of the times we are familiar with grief as, maybe relationships, of course, death, things of that nature. But like you stated, over the past few years, I've been supporting so many women with just the grief of who they were because life is changing so much. We're dealing with so much, whether they're a new mom, right? That old version of them. So really, I start by really allowing you, one, to reflect upon maybe who or what you were before, and then we kind of move into asking those questions of who are we now? What do we need in this very moment?
Right. So many women, they're taught to just hold it all together for everybody else. How
Mm.
does that conditioning make grief and identity loss harder to move through?
Well, one, it won't allow you room to truly feel and to really experience your life. We oftentimes, we're in that survival mode, right? So when you're just holding it together and moving through life, um, you don't have a moment to really acknowledge what you're feeling. You're doing a lot of things, but not anything for yourself. So we may be checking the list, right? Getting things done, but deep down inside, maybe there's this disconnection. So it kind of broadens that gap if we continue to operate that self. So here you are in one place, and here is basically your life. You're not really there actually in it and experience it. You're just kind of existing. So I think that's what happens when we are in that state. And in order to move forward out of that state is one, allowing yourself not just a room to or grace, because I love grace. Grace is awesome. Give yourself grace. But beyond that, what do we do after we give ourselves grace, right? Like, how do we work towards something? So I think it's when we become honest and really start asking ourselves questions. What do I need at this time?
Right. Absolutely. I love that. I just remember doing my own grief journey. I just remember going through changes and I didn't really understand and recognize exactly what I was going through, but I felt like parts of me lost confidence in myself, like that self doubt and all of those limiting beliefs that show up after. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what is this? And at that time, right, I
Hmm.
didn't know how to put a name to what it was that I was feeling. And I feel like so many women, they struggle with those type of things, but they don't know how to put a name to it or language to it or even recognize that it could be a part of grief. But
Hmm.
I just know just during my own personal grief journey, that was definitely something that I struggled with. So
Yeah.
what are some signs that someone may be experiencing an identity shift after loss or transition? Are there any things that may come up during conversations that could be a sign that this could be, just a shift in your identity after a loss?
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes, sometimes our body will give us signs before, our mind catches up, right? So I always talk to the people that I support and even myself. I check in physically, like, how am I feeling? Am I feeling any pain or, aches or, just something's going on in my body? Because sometimes that shows up there. But if, in the term, and if we're thinking how we're existing, I often ask questions like, and when you took a moment to kind of slow down, how are you really feeling? Right. So I think noticing that you're feeling really disconnected and disconnected can look different in all of us. Right. But I
Right.
think deep down inside, we realize like, wait, I did that thing today that I usually love doing, and it's just not hitting the same. Right. Like I'm in that. Or maybe I need support, but the support that I'm getting, it doesn't feel like I'm being supported, right? So we start to realize those little things, and a lot of the times we just bypass them. Like, oh, it's just today, it's just a week, it's
Uh-huh.
just a month. But I really truly believe that that's their signals saying, hey, there's a shift here. We may need something else. We may need to show up differently for ourselves, or we need to ask for that additional support and help. So some of those signs are there. You start to see yourself trying to distance it. And then some of the other things like irritability or, shutting down. And people can shut down in different ways. Maybe you're active at work. When you come home, you're done. You don't have much to give, right? Or vice versa. So there's so many different signs that I think, but the main thing is really taking a moment to check in and see how are you feeling. And we usually have the answer. It's about kind of listening to that.
Right. No, absolutely. It's that you get home and completely depleted. Like you have nothing
Done.
else for nobody else.
Nothing.
Don't try to ask me for nothing. I done gave everything to everybody else at work today. I am
Yeah.
done. Um, do you often see women trying to hold on to who they used to be? And, when I think about that for myself, I had to realize that I can give myself permission to become who I need to be in this new season.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a big thing. And even from my own experience, and I talk about it in my book as well. I was at a point in my life where I was trying to hold on to not just who I used to be, but what people expected from me and who they expected Cherise to be. And it's so hard because, again, you're grieving that old you, and it's so difficult. And I didn't at the time, even as a therapist, I didn't even know that I was experiencing that until I really took some time for myself. And I realized, like, wow, Cherise, like, we're different. We can't do the
Hmm.
same thing to get through this. So I see that a lot. And it's so hard. What I noticed is, um, admitting that, like, we're changing can be hard, and not
Mhm.
figuring out where we're going because sometimes we don't have the answer, right? Maybe you're just
Right.
figuring out what's coming next, who you are, your sense of identity and self, and I think there's so much room in that. I actually love that part because you can explore, right? You can figure
Mhm.
out, "This is what I like now, this is what I need." So I like yeah, that's one of the biggest pieces is that trying to hold on to that, but what's more empowering and powerful is letting that go so you can move into that new sense of self and support.
Absolutely. So this speaking of your book is called "You've Been Holding It Together," and that title alone just will stop people in their tracks.
Mm.
What made you write the book, and who did you write it for?
Oh, well, I wrote it for myself back then, many years ago for what I needed, but then I also wrote it for people who are holding things together and not sure where to start, right? And they know something's a little off. Maybe, I'm going day to day. Things are okay, I guess, right? But
Mhm.
inside, something's disconnected. And the reason why I wrote the book is because I remember being in that space and how difficult it was. It was so difficult. And I didn't know what to do with it. I was just going through the motions and going day to day, and people were congratulating me, like, you're doing great. And I'm like, y'all don't know what I'm feeling. I am just holding this together. I'm like having a smile on my face, but I'm waking up in the middle of the night, like, what's happening? So I think in that time period, that's why I wrote because of that time period is the reason why I wrote the book, and I wrote it for people who, have experienced that feeling and just need some relief and support
Mhm.
while in that space.
I love that. Thank you. So
Mhm.
you talked a little bit about grace. So what role do you think, self-compassion and grace play in this whole process?
It plays a huge process. When you give yourself grace, it's like giving yourself permission, right?
Mhm.
Give yourself permission to say, "Okay, this is what it was, and this is maybe what I need." And I don't have to, accelerate the process. I don't have to, I can just exist in the fact that this is where I'm at right now, right? And how do I move
Mhm.
forward? More slow and steady pace. I think that is a huge part, the grace and self-compassion, because sometimes we're really hard on ourselves, especially if we're the one holding it together. We're like, "We gotta get the things done." Right?
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
So when we think about boundaries, right? How do boundaries play a role when your identity is shifting? Because we're holding it together for everybody. We're not
Mhm.
taking care of ourselves. And, I talk a lot about boundaries with, with my clients and those that I'm working with. How do you think boundaries play a role when your identity is shifting?
Yeah. Well, I think, after transition and as you're changing, your capacity changes, right? And when your
Mhm.
capacity changes, sometimes people and things expect for you to be that same version of yourself. And we know, right? We already feel it and know that we're in transition, we're changing, things are happening. So those old boundaries may not stick, they may not work anymore. So that's where we may have to kind of come in and say,
Mhm.
hey, there's a shift here. And usually a lot of the times our boundaries do shift as we're shifting. And being to honest with those people and places and things where those boundaries need to come into play is really important because it then supports your transition, right? Versus going against it. So boundaries play a huge role.
Right. Absolutely, it does. So when we think about, as you're working with your clients, maybe what are some things you guide your clients to do when they're trying to reconnect with themselves?
Yeah. So I'm really big on one of the things that I talk about within a book too is a pause, like the intentional pause moments. And I created like a pause menu for my clients. And it's all of these cool things. You can take like an appetizer, a main dish, a dessert, just you know, smaller moments for pause because I know a lot of the times when we are within these shifts or changes, there's not a lot of room to really take a moment and I'm talking about a room like silence to listen to ourselves. So I think that's one of the first things that I ask and just say, take a moment. It doesn't have to be a long period of time. And then that allows us to start to ask some questions and really tap into how we feel. And then we process. So we
Mhm.
do a lot in deep reflection that helps support them.
Yeah, I love that. Taking a time to pause, like, I just know I have to remind myself that very often, because you're
Mhm.
go, go,
Yeah.
go, and you're doing for everyone, and you're working, and some people have a 9 to 5 and a 5 to 9, and, you have a
Mhm.
family, kids, and everything, right? Church, community, and you're doing all the
Yeah.
things, but we don't always take time to pause for ourselves, even if it's just taking a walk. I love listening to podcasts, not just my own, but others. And I put earphones on, my headphones on, and sometimes I'm just walking around the house and my kids know that this is mommy's time. Like,
I love
because I may
that.
not have a chance to go and take a walk
Go on.
because,
Mhm.
I got to cook dinner, I got to fix lunch. But
Right.
this is my moment. This is a little bit of me time to just decompress from the day, like to
Yeah,
take a moment for myself. So, and it
I
took
love
me
that.
some time to get to that point where I had
Mhm.
to realize that I needed to find time to pause. And if that looks like just me popping in the headphones and
Mhm.
listening to something, whether it's, like I said, podcasts or music, whatever the case
Mm.
may be while I'm cooking dinner, that's my moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, and I love how that's something you can do, consistently all the time. So when I talk about those moments, I'm not saying, gotta find something fancy and crazy to do. It's like, what is something that you can actually keep up with and um, keep keep going, right? Like,
Right.
so in your headphones, that's something that you can do while you're still cooking, right? Still taking a moment, but it's
Exactly.
oh, I love that.
Yeah, because Instagram and social media will have you thinking you gotta be out
Oh
here.
gosh. Oh, man. That's a whole girl, then we could have a whole 'nother conversation on that one.
Right. So don't believe everything you see on Instagram because that's not everybody's real life, right?
It's
So
not.
do what works for you, what's best for you. Something, even if it's that small, with putting on headphones while you're fixing the family dinner, that could be a moment of pause for you.
Absolutely.
So for the woman who's listening right now, who's maybe somewhere in the middle of all of this, right? She's grieving and
Mhm.
she doesn't feel like herself and she doesn't even know where to start. What's one thing that you want her to hear today?
What I want her to hear today is that it's okay to be where you are right now, right? Like, it's okay to be in this very moment and understand that eventually you will get to the other side where you'll feel better. You'll have a better understanding of yourself. I will also say, really get support. Please surround yourself by the right support, not just any support. But this is another thing that I want to say when you get the support. If you're able to, please be vocal on what type of support you need from those people, right? Because that's what I find as well as we're shifting and grieving and we expect for people to show up for us. Absolutely, and they will, but are they showing up in a way in which you need them? And sometimes people
Right.
don't know if we're not able to articulate that and express that. So that's what I would say to them.
Yeah, that's so true is having the right people surround you and letting people know what you need. Most people ask, "Hey, let me know if you need anything. How can I help?"
Mhm.
But they don't know how, and sometimes you have to help them help you. And
Absolutely.
community is so important, and I would just say that that was one thing I didn't do a good part of for myself when I was going through
Mhm.
my own grief journey because I felt like I was all alone. Nobody else was going through this. So I was suffering in silence. But as I have grown, as I've learned, community and support is needed.
Yes.
And there are so many avenues of getting that these days where I felt like the social media part wasn't around during that time. There wasn't all of
Yeah.
these great groups. I did see a therapist myself. So
Mhm.
that was a part of my journey is actually going to see a licensed therapist. And that's not something in the Black and Brown community that we talk about often is seeking therapy. We don't want to show our hand. We don't want to tell what's going on in our lives. We try to, keep everything suppressed. But
Yeah.
I would say seek professional therapy if that is truly something that you need um, to help you walk through this journey, to help you know that put language to whatever it is that you're going through. So,
Mhm.
Cherise, this conversation was so needed. And thank you so much for putting language to something many people feel, but we don't always know how to explain it.
Mhm. Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, before we close, can you just share with our listeners where they can connect with you and learn more about the great work you're doing?
Yes, so I am on Instagram at Therapy with Cherise. You can also check out my website, which is Release to Heal, which is up with the number two. And that's where you can find where you can pre-order my book. Pre-orders just opened, and also where you can get a ton of mental health resources as well.
And if you want to connect with Cherise, all of her information will be in the show notes. And if this episode resonated with you, do me a favor, share it. Send it to a friend, a family member, somebody in your circle who needs to hear that healing and purpose are still possible for them. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, because trust me, we have more incredible guests and conversations coming your way. And if you haven't already, like and leave us a review. It helps more women find this show and join this community. And until next time, keep highlighting your healing.